friends and family. Welcome, friends and family. We're joined together. We're going to be talking about a trip, an adventure, a time when we went down into Texas to a place we'd never been before, to a place called Tesoro Escondido Ranch, on something that's called a father-son adventure. And reason Miss Phyllis, or Grandma, is with us is because she kind of helped navigate on the trip and coordinate, and she actually went to work in the kitchen and helping out in the facility while we were there. But first of all, we met a man named Dudley Hall, and this was in the Brian met him for the first time in November of 2011 at the at a conference we were in Montreat, North Carolina. And Dudley was a man's man, and he was ministering, and he talked about something called a father-son adventure, a time to be together. And so that kind of sparked an interest, because Brian grew up without a dad, and I grew up without a dad. So I didn't have a son, and he needed a dad. So we decided we were going to fake it till we make it. And we went down into this father-son conference, because when does a young man know that he's a man? When his dad tells him, when he affirms him. And this is common in cultures such as Native Americans. It's common in the Jewish community, called something called a bar mitzvah. In the Native American, it's called a rite of passage. When a young man goes out, he goes and hunts, and he begins to provide for himself. Well, when does a young man know that he's a man? When he begins to come into the approval of what his dad has raised him up, teaches him things, and he begins to stand on his own affirmation. So we will be talking for the next several times about this trip that we took to Mineral Wells, Texas, which is near Dallas, Texas. But after we met the man Dudley in November of 2011, we set up and decided that we were going to go to the FatherSon Conference, which was in 2012, June 7th through the 10th. And so Miss Phyllis, or Grandma, made all the reservations and plans, and we put it together. Well, we also had I had a niece, her husband, and 2 children in Dallas, Texas. So all those things combined, we kind of packed everything up, got it together, went to the airport, flew out, and arrived in Dallas, Texas. So the ministry is called Kerygma Ventures. It's Successful Christian Living with Dudley Hall and his son, David Hall. And so they put it together, and they have a ranch, they had bunkhouses, they had an auditorium. All these were new facilities on the Brazos River. And there's some legend, and there's some historical things that went on during the Spanish times with loads of gold, and there's all kinds of adventure and things that we needed to explore. What do you, Brian, what is, when we start talking about this, what is the thing that sticks out in your mind the most, that just really changed your direction or changed your understanding about anything about that trip that really stuck out to you?
The first thing was the plane trip, taking a plane trip for the first time.
So you'd never been on a plane trip. So what was that like to you?
First, when we first got on there, it took some time. Then after that, I stared at Grandma because I was in a panic mode. I didn't know if y'all knew I was panicking.
No, we didn't. You covered it up pretty good.
I was panicking. Because everything was like going in slow motion. So it was like right there by the engine. And I sat by the window. So everything was just loud and I was panicking. And once the plane was going up, it just made it worse. But once we got like up there, it was like so beautiful to see.
So you're thinking, how in the world that big hunk of metal was able to fly?
Definitely.
That was quite an adventure. And what else did you remember about that? That was were you glad to get back on the ground?
I really was.
We landed in Newark, New Jersey. That was our first destination.
Didn't we have to change planes?
I think we did change planes there and flew to Dallas.
Yeah.
What was it about those birds, Brian?
Just sitting there. We was like sitting together, and birds were just flying everywhere. And all of a sudden, something told me to look down. Then I just saw a pigeon coming towards me up under my chair, and it just walked off and like it went.
Where were you at then?
We was in Jersey.
Okay.
Waiting for our next flight.
Well. Okay. All right. And then anything that sticks out about that planning of that trip, Phyllis, that you remember about in the early days in the beginning of that?
Well, in the planning, originally it was just you and Brian going. And then we mentioned to Dudley or his wife, anyway, we mentioned to some of them, I guess it was Dudley and his wife, that if they needed extra someone to work in the kitchen, that I'd be willing to come along. And they said, sure, we can always use somebody to help out in the kitchen. And I enjoyed it. I was very tired. It was long days. We had to be up at 6 o'clock and have breakfast ready. What time, do y'all remember what time you came down for breakfast? 6:30?
Probably something like that.
Yeah, I think you started coming in around 6:30, maybe. And then we had to rush to get everything ready for everybody coming in, and then we had to clean it. We cleaned everything up, and then we had to start getting ready for the lunch, and we had very little time between that, and in the afternoon we may have had an hour that we could just, rest, or we'll go outside, enjoy the beautiful property, and then we'd have the evening meal ready, and then we would clean up, and usually I would retire by 8:30, 9 o'clock. I was ready to retire for the evening. And of course, I didn't see you and Brian except when you came in for the meals. So, but how was the food? Could y'all remember what the food was like?
It was good.
Yeah, I was real impressed with the young woman that I was working with. She planned really interesting, healthy, delicious food. It just wasn't your, it was. She put extra ingredients in it.
Well, you learned a little more about cooking too.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And food preparation and
I did.
dealing with it.
Yeah, and a lot of love. She put a lot of love in it. I really enjoyed working with her, and it was a really fun vacation for me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Brian and I didn't really know what we were in for, and so when we went. But before we got to the ranch, we got back into Dallas, and we had some time. And so, being the true North Carolinians that we were, we wanted to try out and see what Texas barbecue was all about. So that was one of our first things that we did?
Yeah, we got the rental car.
We got a rental car at the airport, and then we drove around, and we found some Texas barbecue. And we went, and so we found this place that looked like it did a lot of business, and so we ordered what we thought was appropriate, and it was more than enough. And so Brian got, what did you get?
I had got the ribs, beef ribs, and I can't remember the size, but I think I got fries.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a delicious cheesecake.
Yeah. Well, you know, here in North Carolina, mostly they do have beef ribs, but most of the
They
time,
were not on a diet.
most of the time we have pork ribs in North Carolina with a different type of barbecue and sauce. And so we got beef, and we got some ribs, and we got a sampler of
Everything, chicken.
of everything, the chicken. And so we had so much food left, we had to take to-go boxes, and even the next morning when we woke up, went down and had a continental breakfast. We still had food left over, and so much food that we gave it to the people that were waiting on us at the hotel, that we had food. So we just had ample amount, and it was a different kind of barbecue than what we were used to. And it was more of a sauce than it is like a vinegar base in North Carolina.
It was delicious.
It was good.
It was very
It was
good.
delicious.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was definitely a place I would love to go back to.
So during that time, we went to see my niece and her husband and 2 children who live in Dallas. And so we spent a short amount of time there and visited them the first time we'd seen the children at their new home. And it was a delightful trip and time to spend together. And
Afternoon,
yeah.
evening, and dinner, and then we retired to our hotel about, I guess it was about 9 o'clock when we went back to our hotel.
Right. Then the next morning, we headed out for Mineral Wells, which was far. But Brian needed something at the CVS.
Well, at the airport, they confiscated our our personal items.
Yeah.
And so therefore we decided that maybe we should go ahead and get our personal items that morning while we were in Dallas, because we envisioned that Mineral Wells was way out in
Maybe one stoplight type town.
Yeah.
But
So Brian was so gracious. He had got this blackberry, and of course we thought that was great. And so he said, "Oh, I'll put it in my GPS," which he did, and it put us on this freeway that started taking us down what we thought was downtown. It was roads, like Coy would say, spaghetti was running everywhere. These roads and bridges.
3 or 4 layers of bridges over top of each other. I would call it spaghetti highway, because it was bridges everywhere. And I didn't know where all of them went, but every one of them went different ways. We could see the CVS, but we couldn't get there.
We couldn't find the road to get there.
So finally we gave up, and we decided we were going to head for Mineral Wells.
We saw a sign said Mineral Wells, and I said, "Let's take it. Let's go to Mineral Wells and get out this."
By this time, our nerves were a little bit fractured, because we weren't used to the fast pace of Dallas, Texas. And so when we got on the road, everybody was moving. And so we had to move, and we moved as best we could. When we got to Mineral Wells, the first place we saw, what do you think it was?
CVS.
CVS. So all that labor, we found it. So anyway, then we took it and headed towards the directions of where we were going to the Tesoro Escondido Ranch. And we went out a long road, and I kept going and
Dirt
going.
roads.
And then we came to a gate, and we found out we had to punch in a security code. And when we did, we opened up the gate, and we came on in, and we said, wow, there was land after land after land.
Miles and
miles
miles and miles.
And we finally arrived, and a beautiful location with Caribbean Adventures. And
The most gracious
host.
host. Oh my.
So 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 tomorrow we will share with you what we experienced there and some of the lessons that we learned about how it is to learn what to be a father and what it means to be a son. Hope you tune in and join us in that adventure of going to Texas.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Day in, day out, it's the same road we're walking down. Same job, same town, 'cause we've been told that's the way our world goes round. Walking on the grounds we've always known, stepping on the footprints in the snow. But when it melts, the other ways will show.